Hey guys, this is AgentMindStorm, and welcome back to Cubes and Contemplations. Today, we'll be talking about hindsight, and specifically asking, is hindsight pointless? Now, hindsight is the process of looking back at things that you did and deciding whether they were good to do or not. It can be draining for a lot of people to think about past mistakes constantly. They're always thinking, oh, I should have said something different in this conversation because it would have been less embarrassing and I wouldn't think about it now. But it can also allow you to decide better actions for the future. You can say, well, even though I said that embarrassing thing in that conversation, I can say something different in this conversation because I know it didn't go over well last time. So today we'll be discussing hindsight's merits, its problems, and if you should even bother using it at all. First, though, I would like to dispel an idiom, which that is a really fancy way of saying there's a phrase, hindsight 2020, which is usually used sarcastically and can be kind of confusing if you don't actually think about it. The phrase, as I said, it's sarcastic. I'm not actually sure if that's the perfect word. It's said when someone berates someone else for making a decision that they couldn't have seen the outcome of. Like, for example, if you made a choice to press a button and you didn't know if this button gave 1 million people food or if it gave you a Pepsi, and you push the button that gives you a Pepsi instead of giving 1 million people food, and someone's like, well, you should have pushed the other button. Well, then someone could reply, oh, hindsight 2020, because yeah, obviously the other button did it, but you didn't know that in the past, so why are you thinking about it that way? I started with this phrase because it's the most common example of talking about hindsight in common speech, and it is a negative portrayal. When you hear the phrase hindsight 2020, it's suggesting that using hindsight is pointless. That's what the whole phrase is about. It's you shouldn't be using hindsight here because there was no way you could have known the information you know now in the past, so it's pointless to be using hindsight. My original idea for this video was actually to argue that hindsight was indeed pointless before I started thinking about it some more and writing my notes out, and I'm like, no, it's actually not pointless. That should not be my stance. It's not like this is an obvious answer. I think there are levels of nuance in whether hindsight is a good thing or a bad thing, and that's why it's interesting. You might even think that hindsight is just beating yourself up over past mistakes. I disagree with that. It's more than that. I think hindsight is any time you look back at something you did and judge it. It's that simple. So importantly, this actually means that hindsight is for positive things too. For example, when I get into a vicious cycle of thinking about a past decision I made and I run through 1 million ways I could have done it better, I have to remind myself of all the good decisions I've also made in the past that have led to where I am now that I don't regret, because that'll help me break out of the cycle sometimes of thinking about that one incident that is pretty inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. I suppose my main point is hindsight is a valuable tool for humans. It's not only for deciding whether a past decision was good or bad, but it gives us a way to pre-decide future decisions. If you keep thinking about a dumb mistake you would change, there's a very high chance you aren't going to do it again. Even though your thoughts about the situation and the hindsight when you use it, it's negative, that will lead to positive change in the future because you'll know what to do when you're placed into that situation again. We do have to tame our hindsight, however. The key to mastering hindsight, and okay, I should say this now, I am not claiming that I've mastered hindsight or even gotten anywhere close, but in theory, if I was a perfect person who could train my mind instantly, this is how I would change hindsight in my head. I would have a process always running that's saying, okay, is this a negative mindset? This is very hard to achieve, but whenever I notice myself in a negative mindset in hindsight, I'm like, stop. I have to tell myself, stop. Look, you've got all these good things that you also did in the past. You are not the same person you did back then. Your regrets of your past decisions show that. If you didn't regret it and you did something wrong, that's not a good thing. You should have regrets if there's something that you did in the past that you don't like. I also remind myself, I did make a bunch of good decisions in the past. I mean, look at all the things that have gotten me here. One way that we can actually use hindsight here as a good example is my channel. About 2 years ago now, I uploaded a video on the 4th anniversary of my channel saying I was going to attempt to wind down my series and then eventually end the channel. This was the year before my 3,000 subscriber special. That was the year when Stal blew up because of the meme. And then the year after that is when Pig Step blew up. And if you don't know, those are the 2 most viewed videos on my channel. Stal and Pigstep somehow single-handedly got me back into making YouTube videos and back energized with it, so now I can look back on that and say, I regret saying that I was going to wind down the channel because I don't want to wind down the channel. I like how it is now. I like how it's going. I like our momentum. I do think it can be stressful sometimes, and I may end up taking a break sometime soon, but I don't want to stop it. I do not have any plans to stop it in the near future because I have judged my decision with hindsight and said, look at how well things went after you didn't make that decision. Look at how your channel skyrocketed in popularity. Look at how you've been back into making videos and they're all higher quality and they have great thumbnails. That never would have happened if you had wound down the channel before that could have happened. Obviously. I'm still not great at finding when I'm in a negative mindset. I will often replay conversations in my head. This happens all the time. Whenever I've got free time to think and I'm not doing anything that requires a lot of thought, my head will go back to conversations where I said something dumb, or I said a joke that didn't land and may have even made some people annoyed or mad. And I'm like, well, how could I have done that better? How could I have cleared up confusion before it became an issue? How could I have phrased that in a way that made me less angry? How could I have used less anger in that conversation? How could I have made a better joke in that place or just avoided making one at all? I have to make an effort to notice when I'm doing that so I can stop it and say, no, I am confident in my decisions. I like this. I like how I am now. I do not have incredible, lingering, horrible regrets for these little tiny issues that do not affect me in a large scale. Like, yeah, your conversation with that one person one time was a little awkward, and it could have gone better. But who cares? You have so many other people you can talk to, and so many other conversations to have, and so many other things you've done, and you could be thinking about so many better things than a conversation that you had 2 years ago that you said a silly, embarrassing thing in. So no, hindsight absolutely isn't pointless. It aids us in making future decisions, and it can reassure us about past decisions. You just shouldn't dwell on your mistakes. You do have to acknowledge them, which is how you grow as a person. You say, I don't like that that happened. I want it to be different. And that's where it ends. There is no beating yourself up. There is no incredible amount of thought put into how you would change the situation, because the fact is, you can't change the situation, no matter how much you think about it. Well, those are my thoughts on hindsight. I know this video was kind of short. I didn't have that many notes about it, but also, do you like this length of videos more or less? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes people like listening to longer talks, and some people like to listen to shorter talks that they can just go in their head, sit up there for about 8 minutes, and then go out the other side. So do you like this style of video more? And do you find yourself constantly returning to past moments, trying to redo them in better ways? How do you deal with it? Do you deal with it? Do you just let it run its course until you've gone through a million possibilities that could have gone better than the way it did in real life? I would like to hear about it, but for now, I do want to tell you all, thanks for watching, and I will see you later.